Jim Walton is here.
Hey, folks.
I am.
Hey, Jim, I just want to touch base with you because have you contacted Lenny yet? The new,
I was supposed to contact Lenny
well, you're his liaison.
for Lenny. Oh,
Fire department.
I did not.
Yeah.
I'm
sorry.
I was talking to Lenny, and then so if you can contact him, that would be great.
All right, let me. I'll reach out to him tomorrow.
Cool.
Sorry, Becky.
No problem.
Jim, we have Lenny slated on our schedule for our next meeting, November 28th.
Okay.
And I should, I don't know, maybe I should wait until the meeting starts or not. But the chief of police, the chief is not going to be able to make tonight's meeting. And is hoping that she can be scheduled in for 12:12. And I'm sorry, AJ, I should have let you know sooner, but.
No, that's okay. I was wondering because we hadn't seen a budget.
Yeah.
So, okay, so
At the library.
Right.
her preference is for 12:12. Okay, and we have
Yes.
the library schedule. All right. I don't see a concern since we only have one other department scheduled for the 12th. Anybody have any concerns about kind of tabling them till the 12th?
And that's the second slot, which is 7:40.
Yeah.
7:45.
7:45, yeah. So we'll do library at 7:15, sorry, 7. And then, and then police at 7:45.
Okay.
Okay.
This is a new system with liaison, so it's going to take a little bumpy to start.
Yeah.
Well, but I wanted some once we start, I wanted some clarification about.
Sure. All right. Well,
who's on
let's.
first.
I think we can convene since Jim Hemingway sent a message. I don't know if he sent it to just me or everyone else, but he's not available tonight. I think he's under the weather. So
Okay.
I think we have everybody we're going to have. Yeah. So let's call the meeting to order. Before we dive in, April, did you have something you wanted to make sure we discuss tonight?
Yeah, just the process of, my understanding is that the budget goes to the town administrator as the keeper of the budgets, not to us first. That I just wanted to get clarification on that as we're moving towards becoming liaisons.
Yeah, right. No, that's a good question because I think that historically, right, has been the process, Becky, is that the budgets go to you, and now that I think we've introduced this liaison role, I think maybe in some cases. So I know that Bob, you did a great job of sort of forwarding us materials as you got them from Steve for the highway department. Did those also go directly to Becky, and do we want? No, okay. So,
But he did. I think Steve, in the last one he did, he included me.
okay.
So I do have it now.
So I think.
I'm sorry, Bob, you're muted. We can't hear you.
The first one that I got from Steve the other day, I did send to the committee. I also CC'd Becky.
Yeah, no.
But hold on. The second one I received this afternoon from Steve, and the email that I received was CC'd to Becky. So then I just forwarded that to the committee. So that's just the chronology of what I did. All right.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
that was great. Yeah. I guess the question is, have we introduced a possible bit of confusion where department heads don't know if they're supposed to share the budget directly with their liaison or with Becky or both. But yeah, so
What does
maybe
our
we
letter
should.
say?
Confused too.
Yeah, I think our letter says that it should go to the town manager.
Because we didn't change that.
Right.
Right. We didn't change that language. So I think what we should do, I think liaisons should just, in your next communication with departments, just reiterate that instruction that their budget proposals should go directly to Becky. And they can CC you on that. I don't see any problem with that. But I think we do want to make sure that it's going directly to Becky.
Well, at this
Yeah,
point, they
George?
should have all been at this point, they should have all been turned in, right? We asked everybody to
But they're
submit them by
not.
the end of October.
But they're not,
Not even
yeah.
close, huh?
Chase some
I mean-
chasing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just like to I like the committee to read the finance committee handbook, where it says clearly that the budget is our document. Of course, we work closely with the town administrator to develop the document, but the idea that it has to go through the employee of the select board before it gets to us, I don't understand it. It's like we share it with Becky. We work cooperatively with Becky. It's not like
I don't think it's a big problem, Bob, but I'm just saying, I think what this confusion, like in your case, I thought you were on top of it, right? And as soon as you got an initial draft and then a follow-up draft, you were good about sharing it with the committee. There might be a scenario, some of us are busier than others, where the budget doesn't go to Becky, it goes directly to a liaison, and that person doesn't forward it to the whole committee right away, and so there's a delay introduced there. I mean, I think in theory, if these budgets go to the liaison, who then quickly, immediately shares it with the whole committee, then I don't think we have a problem. But I guess I would be a little bit concerned about things getting kind of lost.
Yeah, I guess
in
I
the
don't
shuffle.
I guess the only thing I'm responding to is April made a statement at the beginning of this conversation saying that she thought there was some issue where the budgets didn't go through the town administrator to the rest of us. And
Right.
I don't share that opinion. I think that we all work together. We share it. We don't, it's not directed by any one of us, by the town administrator or exclusively the finance, but we share it. And so that's what I tried to do, AJ and the rest of the committee.
Yeah.
And you did.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Bob. I have absolutely no criticism at all about you. You handled this situation. I thought you did a great job of sharing the information as soon as you had it. I'm just saying, I want to make sure we're giving people a clear instruction about what to do moving forward. So
I'll just say one last
Becky.
thing. Before
Okay.
Becky, go ahead.
Go ahead. Becky, and then Bob. Becky?
I thought Bob was going to say one last thing.
No, I'll wait for
Okay.
you. Go ahead, Becky.
Okay, all I want to say is my objective is to make sure there's a complete set of all the budgets. And that's what I'm trying to do, Bob. And that's the only thing I'm trying to do. Last year, it was mixed up and it was confusing and I didn't have all the budgets. And I don't want that to happen again. And that's the only reason I'm speaking up, is to make sure, I don't care if it's before or after, but the main point is I would like to be able to say, I have a budget from
Yeah.
everybody who submitted it. And I need to have the ability to know that. And and at this current moment, I don't, because I'm missing budgets. I have some I need to share with the finance committee, but I'm still trying to collect them from other people. So I'll be forwarding all the treasurers. He did it in a different way. It's very effective. It's easier to read, but that's the bottom line. There just
Okay.
needs to be somebody who has a full set so we don't screw up when we input all the information into the master spreadsheet. That's
Yeah.
the only concern I
Okay. That makes sense. Becky, can you just maybe give us a quick rundown of who from your end you're still waiting to see budgets from, so we can make sure that the liaisons know who they need to be following up with. So we have police.
Mhm.
Right. I have, the police, Kristen forwarded hers, late this afternoon, so I'll be sending that.
Okay,
I have the treasurers, the accountants, which is unusual. I don't have the town clerk. She's almost always, but she had a major computer issue that set her back.
okay,
And I still need the fire chiefs.
Right.
But I talked to him about it today. And he's gonna look over, I'm gonna look it over what he's working on with him, and then he's gonna submit.
got it. What about
Hopefully,
library? Do we have?
the library, I've seen the draft, but I don't have it.
Okay.
But I think she's very close, and I could check I need to check my emails to be certain, because I know she was almost done, so I might have that one.
Okay, so it sounds like the main ones we're waiting on are fire, library, police you have, so that's gonna be coming to us shortly. And then, of course, we'll get the school at a later date.
Yeah.
How about
And I
Okay.
have the treasurer's stuff, so that's a big one,
Right.
because it's like
How
4
about
people,
the
assessors, we have.
You have the assessors. How about the town collector?
That's the one, she's a little bit late. She's checking on, I think she was trying to get information on the one more fee from a
All
bank.
right, so I don't need to follow up with her then.
You could, but
Well, it
she's,
sounds like you are.
yeah,
Okay, that's fine. I won't then. I don't want to bug her if you're already working with her on it.
I wanted to say something, and Becky had something to
Sure.
say.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
To her. I wanted to say that my concern is, and this was my concern since it's been on this committee, including last year, is that we, the committee, at least in my opinion, haven't received some of these things until the last minute. So what I want to do as a liaison is try to get the information. I wasn't able to meet Steve because I wasn't able to hook up with him till recently, but then we got together and I got the information from him that was current at that moment. I shared it with the committee so they could have as much time as possible to review it before the meeting. That's what I'm trying to do. And then Steve updated the information. I sent that right along. So I think that for me, in order for us to vet things, in order for us to examine things, we need to get them as far ahead of the meeting as possible. And that hasn't always been the case. And I think I'm trying to improve on that from my end just with this department. That's all.
Sounds good. I think we all, yeah, I mean, we all share that goal. So that sounds good. All right. So I see Steve. Hi, Steve. So why don't we actually get started with you, and then we'll shuffle the agenda around a little bit since you're here. Did you have something you wanted to say before we open up your budget and have you walk us through it?
I was just gonna say that I felt like, as Bob being my liaison, that I should just go through him. But the only reason I included Becky this afternoon was because she and I had spoke about an hour earlier, and I just wanted to see what I had done.
Yeah.
But otherwise I feel like I should go through my liaison, and it was my fault that we didn't get together earlier, because I didn't find that handout until the day before Bob and I met last week.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we've introduced this kind of new process, which I think is a good thing. I'm sure there'll be wrinkles to work through, but I think I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you were able to kind of share updated information with Bob. I'm glad Bob was able to share it with the rest of the committee. So Becky, if you give me screen sharing permission, I'll pull up the highway department's proposed budget, and we can walk through that. All right. Okay. All right, Steve. So I think this is our first time working with you as the superintendent, right, of the department. So this is first first opportunity we've had to have you kind of walk us through the department proposed budget. So can you just kind of walk us through the categories of your budget for your proposed budget for FY25? It looks like there are two line items where you're proposing kind of modest increases from last year. So as you're walking us through this, it'd be great to have you talk a little bit about some of the thinking that went into the new proposed amounts for those two lines.
Yeah, we can walk through this together for the first time.
Yeah.
So the snow removal materials, that I guess that's static and can grow as needed or not needed. That one, I don't even know what that, I think that's everything but the labor and highway uniforms. That will definitely stay the same because we're gonna have a window where there's only 2 of us instead of 3. Tools and equipment, I don't see us buying anything besides replacing a lost wrench or something. We're not gonna buy a new mower or anything this year. The highway expenses, that I added $500 to that for what I call safety trainings or education, because I'm about 23 hours into the OSHA 30, and that's $160 to do that. And I also want Dave, my sole employee at this point, to also take that class. So that's $320 right there. And then I was telling Becky today that our hoisting, we have to have at least 2. We have to have the 2A, which is the excavator, loader, backhoe, and we need the 4G, which is the over the guardrail mower, and that is $75 each every year, whether you retake the test or just do the continuing ed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I felt like we needed to add 5, because Dave and I both want to do the flagger training just to make sure that we're directing traffic correctly and not getting hit by Subarus and Priuses. You laugh. Since the pandemic, people are driving totally different.
Well,
The highway materials is staying the same. The machinery maintenance is the same, although we're hoping we'll save some on that now that we have the new truck, which we broke in this morning with the black ice. We took it out to treat the roads for the first time, and it worked excellent. The gravel road maintenance, that 28,000 is going to stay the same. I looked today, and the both processed gravel and hardpack have increased $1 a cubic yard each of the past 2 years, but we used 756 cubic yards of hardpack last year, so that shouldn't affect it too much. But if it does keep going up, then we're going to have to look at it again for FY26. The road markings or line painting, which I like to call it, I found that it was I think $7,900 to do only some of the roads, and then Tim had put the hand painting, which is, I think it said 13 stop lines, the 2 parking lots, the town hall, the library, and the handicap spots, that and 3 crosswalks. That handwork itself was $1,000, so it really it's much more than the $8,000. It's increased in the last 2 years. I think it's the paint it's hard to get, and it's become so expensive. Let's see, the catch basin cleaning, that's gonna stay the same, because unless we have some kind of 4-inch rains or something that are gonna dump huge, massive amounts of material into the catch basins, we always go around and try and only clean the ones that have between 16 and 18 inches or more material, and anything less than that we leave for the next year. And that looks like that's my story. So yeah, it was $2,000 for the road striping and 500 for the trainings.
Great, thanks, Steve. I'm just running through the totals. I'm just totaling up everything just to make sure the math is working out. I'm sure it is, but okay. Let's see, we have some questions from the committee. You want to start, Jim? Walton?
Yeah, hi, Steve. Welcome to your first budget review.
Thank you.
Yeah, just one question. Early when you're going through uniforms, you talked about one fewer people. Are you looking, maybe I missed something in prior meetings, but are you looking at being one less person on that team?
As briefly as possible, I called the two applicants to see if they can come up either Thursday or Friday to do an interview. And one of them is a person that was summer help this year, so we know what he's capable of. He just needs to, we need to make sure he has the licenses. But so it'll be a short time, but Tim retired on the 30th, so there'll be probably 2 months where there's only 2 uniforms instead of 3.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Right, but this is for fiscal 25. You're gonna be fully staffed in fiscal 25, aren't you?
True.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, I'm wrong. You're right.
But the current year budget, does that reflect full staff? The 24?
It does.
So the budget, from a budget perspective, these numbers are okay then, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Even on the
okay.
uniforms.
Yeah.
All right. I have a quick question, and I think I just need to be reminded about this. So this total expense line at the bottom is excluding the snow removal materials, right? And so is that because that first line is actually like a wages line and not operational expenses? So is this snow removal, even though it says materials, is that a labor related line? And I think Becky might be the best person to answer this.
Okay, so I'm looking at the budget and I think
Well, it's materials.
the
It's that.
snow is usually separate. So it's in a
Right.
separate category. Usually if you look in your budget.
Yeah.
you've got the
We have
separate
materials.
highway, we have snow and ice is a separate category.
I see. So
Wages-
that's why this. Okay. That's why this total at the bottom of
It's
104.
only for the department.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I see. So that's the way it's.
Yeah,
And that's the way it's
That's right.
presented on the budget. The 101,750, you can see that on our budget is the total
Yeah.
subtotal of the highway department. And then below that is snow removal wages and snow removal materials at 50,875.
Right. So that number shouldn't be part of this sheet. Snow removal materials represents sand and salt and things like that.
but
Right, I
the
see.
reason it's on the sheet is because those prices do change.
Yeah.
And we have years where we're over. We often are over on the materials line for snow, but the reason we don't increase it too much is if we have a real snow disaster, we wouldn't get reimbursement from the state. So that snow removal lines you tend to keep as modest as possible, like you don't want to be under on them because then it would have an impact on the state aid you'd get for emergencies.
Right.
Okay.
But every year, the cost of that line actually reflects what the need for the town is. That's all, because of the variability of snow removal expenses.
Yeah, and it could be under or over.
But would rather this be under, right? For the reason you just cited, okay.
Yeah. But not
right.
too far under,
Right, I don't know.
because then you'd
Okay.
wipe out your free cash.
Yeah,
And the subtotal really, it's not important. I mean,
It's
it's
not.
important, so we know what the highway department is, but the budgeting is all happening on those individual lines.
yeah.
Mhm.
No, as soon as Becky or whoever it was pointed out that, right, we have the snow removal expenses as a separate section of our budget, I remember that was the issue, but okay. Let's see, any other questions from the committee, Bob?
Yeah, so I was gonna ask Steve about the road striping line. 25% seems like a lot for 1 year, if it's to reflecting the cost of the material, the paint. For the hand marking. Don't we do the hand markings on a regular basis anyway? Is that something that we do only
They're
occasionally?
done. Yeah, they're done every year. Although they're usually done in the fall, but I didn't do them because I wasn't quite sure how much. Because what we did was we did the double line on Leverett, Cooleyville, Prescott, along with the fog lines, and then we did both Pelhams.
Yeah.
And that's probably gonna be pretty close to the $8,000. So Tim was putting the handwork into the highway materials. Because I found that today.
So I think what happened is the prices have been increasing and Tim just moved where he paid for the part he couldn't afford with the line item instead of
Right.
increasing the line item. So that was 1,000. So it's really only the other 1,000 that is accounting for the increase in pricing right there.
Okay, any other questions from the committee? Steve, I, kind of unrelated to your FY 25 budget, I know from the capital plan that, there are no, at least large anticipated projects for the highway department for this year. But I know there's this lagging issue with the tractor that's, I think Tim explained to us last year, there was some efforts to repair that were unsuccessful. Can you just alert us to, or update us on what the status of that is, and if you anticipate doing anything with that in the near future?
Yeah, the person we were gonna have try and repair it this summer decided that they couldn't do it, but I've got a name of a new backyard mechanic who he used to be employed full-time by the Atlas Farms and now has gone out on his own and makes house calls. So we're gonna try and give him a shot next May when we can open up one of the bays of the garage and make sure the plows are out and see if he can't do it. Otherwise, we're just gonna have to keep our eye out for a used tractor.
Okay.
But right now we have one of Leverett's because they have 4.
And they're sharing a vehicle, is that what's
Yes,
happening?
Matt in Leverett is super good about sharing stuff with us.
And how does that work? Do we compensate them for, like,
Well, if we
expenses or-
trade off, because if they need the hot box to do some patching, they'll borrow that.
I
But
see.
that's about the only thing that we have that they would need to borrow.
So it's just a kind of friendly arrangement for the moment, yeah, or,
That's correct.
okay, great. Okay, George and then Bob?
While we have Steve here, I'm wondering, Steve, you're also the tree warden now. Were you gonna be looking at the tree warden expenses and?
I was
also-
just gonna ask about that because I didn't know if they're just getting rolled into the highway department or if that's gonna be a separate thing still. Because this is the first time that the highway superintendent is the tree warden.
Well, it's still gonna have its own line, you know, we're gonna want to track the tree warden costs separate anyways. So I don't know the answer myself, but we definitely want to keep a separate line for it so that we can track it.
Yeah, I'm looking at our budget here. Yeah, Becky, did you
I
want to
think-
say something about this?
Yeah, because I think it probably would be more appropriate to move that line item to under the highway superintendent, since he is going to be responsible for it. In his job description is highway superintendent, because that
And will he be-
responsibility has been added to him. To that
And
position.
will he still be paid this stipend or whatever this amount is as the tree warden on top of the highway department, or was his salary negotiated with the tree warden?
We negotiate with the tree warden in it, didn't we, Steve?
That's correct.
So we're
So-
gonna budget that line at 0 or delete it.
Or add it to the expenses. Because their tree work was not getting done for a long time.
Well,
So-
that's another
so-
conversation. All right.
At a minimum, we'll move this, if you can see what I'm highlighting, this tree warden expense line. That would move over and be a new line as part of the highway department's budget.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. All right. That's good to know.
We just need to make sure we
As-
have the right dollar amount.
As far as the tree work goes, we have a super deal worked out with Jim's Tree Service of Greenfield, where they come and they spend 6 to 7 hours 3 or 4 times a year with us to do our hazard trees. And they only charge us $1,600. So sometimes we get $5,000 worth of tree work done for $1,600.
Nice.
The
Love
only,
it.
the only catch is that they come when they have open dates and
That's great.
we can't tell them when to come.
And you have the ability, if there's a tree that's urgent, you have the ability to deal with many types of trees, right?
That's correct.
All right, great. Bob?
Yeah, Steve. Oh, first of all, this question's for Steve. You know Ron Rockel from Petersham? You heard him?
I do not.
He has a mobile, I'll send you his contact information. He runs a mobile tractor and equipment repair business. I'm not sure if you'd want to tackle your tractor, but might be worth a look.
Yeah, I'm happy to contact anybody to get that boat anchor running again.
I was looking at Facebook Marketplace today for tractors, and there's a lot of them, but there's a lot of oddball ones that I saw my old tractor on there for sale. But anyway, I was going to ask a question, just a general question that maybe Becky can answer. Did we talked about this tractor repair last year? Did we put aside some money somewhere for this project last year? Did we fund that? No? Okay, curious. I know we discussed it with Tim, you know?
Yeah, and there was no transfers done.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to remember. We didn't do a FinCom transfer?
We might have had to do a small one to do the original repair was really expensive. It was what,
Right.
$6,000 or $8,000. He
Yeah,
might have needed assistance to do that repair, but they never, the
Yeah.
person never showed up to do the work, so he wouldn't have paid the extra money. I mean, it hasn't been spent. I don't think was
Right, that's something
put in
that-
an account, so
There might
I
be
don't,
some money in one of those chapter 30, what do they call those? 30 accounts or something, right? For them. Is that possible?
you mean, okay, yeah, Fund 30?
Yeah, right. And we should look into that. There
I
might
mean,
be some
if
money
there's a
up there.
Fund 30, it would have had to go through town meeting, and we didn't do that.
Well, I was gonna ask another question to Steve. I recall a few years ago, I don't know how many years it was, but we purchased an over the guardrail mower that went on the loader. It was a
Mhm.
hydraulic thing, and I know that Tim and you had a lot of trouble with it. And there was a go around with Devin Lane, who the company that sold it to us. Where is that at? And because he showed me the over the guardrail mower that goes on the 3-point hitch tractor, and I wondered, did that other mower get sent back or something?
No, Mark's Auto actually, that what happened was that the way that Diamond Mower set that up was that the computer was always powered up until you shut the machine off. So it was actually like we were unplugging the computer from the wall instead of shutting it down. So now it has a separate power source where we shut the computer down before we shut the machine down, and the thing is running like it's supposed to.
Oh, great. So that's working out with the loader now.
Yes, it's
That's-
working just like it should.
Great.
Susie and then George.
Yeah, in March, we transferred $10,000 for the tractor repairs. From our FinCom reserve, so I guess figuring out if that was spent or not spent is where we're at on that.
That was spent, that was on the big loader mower.
It says tractor, but we could have been mislabeled.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reason we were so gung ho about having it done by the person that was gonna do it, it was literally in-house, so he was just being paid an hourly rate to work on it and not as a mechanic.
Right, so the bottom, Susie, I think that $10,000 was to cover that that initial repair that Tim spent, you know, like they took it in and it cost so much more than they anticipated. We can pull out the bill and find that. But last
And it
March,
didn't-
it was for the repair that ended up being not a repair because it was still broken, even though they had done all the initial work. It was taken to the shop for, it still didn't work.
It was more brokener.
Right.
Yeah, now I remember. But we should just, I'm sure, I think it would be good to just go back and double check that has been fully spent on that initial
Well, it was
non-repair.
transferred into the account and the account was empty at the end of the year.
Okay. Got it. All right. I thought I saw a
If you
hand
want
up.
to look,
That was me.
you a
Okay.
printout of all the things that account paid for? Would that be helpful?
I can do
guess
that because Tim kept immaculate records, so I couldn't just print you guys out the pages that he's got for that.
I think just yeah, or at least just related to the tractor. Just so we can verify that $10,000 transfer was spent out specifically on that piece of equipment. And right. All right, George and then Bob.
So when the reason I raised my hand was I was going to ask the same question that Susie did, but then she made a comment that might be labeled incorrectly. So I went to the minutes from that day, March 7th, and basically they had a deficit of $3,600 at that point. And they were going to need a roughly 6,300 to get through the rest of the year. So we transferred 10,000 to get them to that number. Because the line was overspent, but it did say here, the note about the tractor is it was going to be evaluated by Chuck Moore in the future. So the transfer was not
Specifically for the piece of equipment.
Right.
Okay, got it. Bob.
Yeah,
Thanks,
just
George.
a splinter of my recollection, which is that meeting, Tim did explain to us that he did send it out to somebody to repair the hydraulics, and you probably remember this, Steve. The guy that did the repair, when he put it back together, the hydraulic pump ended up with a big crack in it, which the repairman insisted he didn't have anything to do with. But that was where it was at. The money was thrown into this repair. The machine came back with more damage to it when it was done. And then the idea was then forwarded to give it to Chuck, and he would take a run at it. So I think we did supplement their budget so that they could handle the cost of that initial repair, as Becky remembered, and also just get the line back up to some reasonable level for the rest of the year. So anyway, That's the way I
Yeah,
recall. it.
that makes, now that you guys are laying this out, I'm remembering this better. Okay. Any other questions for Steve? All
I have
right,
one question, Steve.
go
You
ahead, Bob.
guys gonna have time to get to the that awful weed on the side of Pelham Hill Road this year, or is that finished for the
No.
year? Because it's kind of late now, I guess, to deal with it, right?
I mean, to do anything besides just mow it down?
Right. The dockweed is like, it's all gone to seed, so it's probably already distributed its seed.
The only, well, yeah, so we're planning on doing a whole bunch of roadside mowing this winter if there's not too much snow on the ground. But as far as doing anything else, the only other thing is to spray it, and that is not happening.
Right. Not popular.
Not popular.
Maggie?
There is a patch of knotweed along Pelham Hill Road, which I understand is about 2 feet by 2 feet, where some industrious citizens are experimenting with vinegar to kill it.
Cool.
I wish them luck.
Thank you, Steve.
Why not?
Yeah, and so they're gonna keep track of what happens and they're documenting it, and then they're going, if it fails, they're gonna see if they can get support for doing a different type of mitigation for it. But Bob, did you ask who it was? Oh, you're muted again. I can't hear you.
Didn't ask, but you can, I'd be happy to know.
It was Mary Jo Maffei and Steve, what is the other woman's name?
Pam Osowski.
Yeah, Pam Osowski.
Great, I hope it works.
So I'm looking into the whole idea of the injection where it's not sprayed. You have to actually buy the cool little gun thing and inject the Roundup right into the basil stem and hope that you take it out that way instead of doing the aerial spraying.
That's what we did around town hall about 5 years ago. And it's coming back now, but you have to keep at it. But the one thing Pam mentioned is Mary Jo is researching a new European method that uses electricity to zap the knotweed.
Electroshock therapy, huh?
Yes.
Yes.
So
'Cause I will say that I've done a lot of reading on this, and up until the last 6 or 8 months, they told you that you should mow it down as often as you can until July 1st, and then let it flower in August and September and spray it then. But we've stopped mowing it during the growing season because if you look at the patch across from the Rogers house on Cooleyville paved, you can see that the patch is spreading down the hill, and it's the exact width and shape of our guardrail mower.
Oh, wow. Interesting. It is a ferocious weed.
All right. Well, Steve, thanks for joining us, and appreciate you spending the time with us to answer
Well,
these questions.
Thanks for having me, and you can
Yep.
email or call or whatever, FaceTime. I don't know how to do that, but you can do it anyway.
Well,
Thank
Montague,
you.
Montague Road looks spectacular. I just need to say that. Thank you.
We're trying.
I know.
Keep up the good work.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay. All right. That was our first budget review for the year. Let's go backwards in the agenda now and look at minutes from November 1st. We just had those open. All right. Did folks have a chance to look at the draft minutes? This was a very detailed set of minutes. Thank you, Susie. Okay, Jim Walton?
Yeah, I just had one question regarding section C, alternative budget format.
Yep.
And this is probably more of a question, probably because I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Item 4, I think, is it 4?
Yep.
Yeah, it says the finance committee could recommend departments consolidate some expenditures if needed.
Yeah.
Did you all
So-
come up with a process for that, or how does that go forward?
Not so much, but I guess to give you some context, I think it was, I think there was a kind of consensus, having gone through this process, that how do I say this, that the added benefits of consolidating the budget in the way we kind of set out to do with this trial was not worth the added sort of risk and and work of sort of labor of having to kind of manage two different versions of the budget. And just, I think there was a sense that it introduced opportunities for errors and opportunities for confusion on the part of town residents who might be inclined to look at these two documents and ask questions. But and so I think, having gone through the exercise, I think it was felt by, I think, by the committee, maybe some more strongly than others, but ultimately we all sort of voted unanimously to not move forward with that with that alternative budget format. But I think there was still at least some interest in exploring other ways that we might be able to help departments have a little bit more sort of flexibility in how they manage the expense lines in their budget. And one strategy that came up, and we didn't have a specific plan, and there's no specific follow-ups, but was the idea that for some departments there may be multiple expense lines that could be consolidated into fewer expense lines, and just that in and of itself might would give department heads maybe a little bit more flexibility to kind of manage how they spend that cumulative sum of money. That was a thought. I think that probably would only pertain to a couple of departments that that don't just have a single expense line, but have multiple. Like, I think maybe the fire department would be a good example, where there's, I think, 4 or 5, or maybe even more. Can't remember now. So anyway, that was the thinking behind note 4 here.
Yeah, I guess I understand that. I was just wondering, if was a process defined, or is this just sort of tabled for the future as far as how to go forward with it?
There wasn't a process defined, but I think it's something that we can ask department heads as we're meeting with them. And again, I think this would probably only pertain to maybe 2 or 3 departments, where as part of our budget meeting, I suppose we could ask them outright, like, what do you think of the way this budget's organized? And is there interest in consolidating, 2 or more lines? I mean, we did not discuss a specific follow-up plan or strategy, but I think we just sort of open to the idea. I think at least the conversation about doing that again. And this was something that came up last week to last meeting, which is that I think there was a sense that this wasn't coming from the department heads themselves, right? This alternative budget concept. And so that I think somebody used the phrase, we were like proposing a solution to a problem that didn't necessarily exist, or at least hadn't been articulated by department heads. And so I think this idea of consolidation is something we can discuss and pursue, but I think it ought to be driven by a department head saying, hey, this is kind of wonky the way my budget's set up, and I've got like a lot of small expense lines and might be helpful to do some consolidation. So I think the thought was that that ought to be sort of driven by the department head sort of asking for that kind of change.
Okay,
Susie?
thanks AJ for the explanation.
Yeah,
And
sure.
I'm sorry you had to do that because it was just because I wasn't there last time, and
No,
I
no
apologize
worries.
for not being there for the discussion. But thanks
No
for the
worries.
explanation.
Yeah, and I'll just say, Jim, I think one of the messages I kind of walked away from that discussion was that this was time well spent, and that I think there was a feeling among the committee that this was not like a wasted effort, that we learned something pretty valuable in the process of doing this and exploring it. Susie.
We just had an example that we might consider where Steve said hand painting the lines seemed to come out of a different line, of materials, highway materials, and and the rest of the striping came out of there. So that wouldn't be a bad place for that to get melded if he wants to. But as you say, it can be driven by the department, but the department may not have an idea that they can do it. So that might be a follow-up discussion there.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Maybe we should ask Steve if there would be a sort of good rationale for absorbing that road marking line into the highway expense line. Yeah, we should ask him about that.
Yeah,
Bob.
Back to the minutes, like part D, Susie, number 5. It says second sentence says no one volunteered for school choice committee. I think it'd be more fair to say, or more accurate to say, that I was asked, since nobody else besides me volunteered, I was asked to report back to the committee of my research after conducting research on the subject or something along those lines, because that's what my recollection was of the denouement of that thing, that nobody volunteered to join me on the committee, but I could do some research and get back on the agenda later in the year, right? Is that true? Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's right.
That's what, so I'd like that reflected instead of no one, because I'm here too, you know?
You're not nobody. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
It's helpful if when you want to amend the minutes, you come up with a language so that I can just write it down, or you can just email it to me.
I'll do that, but then we can't really approve it. So I just think that Bob Groves will, after conducting research, will reintroduce the subject later in this year or something like that. Does that make sense?
All right.
Other questions or comments about the minutes?
I just saw one spelling item, just for the record, I guess. The word committee in number 5, I think it was. I lost my place here. Number
5
E,
2.
line 2,
E2.
yeah. Too many.
What one is it?
E2.
E2. Oh, yeah.
That's all I have.
Okay. Great.
Okay. I guess I'll make a motion to approve the November 1 minutes as amended.
I'll second.
All right. George, you want to start the vote? Bob, are you up next? Yeah. You're muted.
I think I read his lips. It looked like he did.
Grove,
Yeah.
aye. Right.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Stein, aye.
Walton, abstain.
So that is approved, 5-0 with 1 abstention. Okay, thanks, Susie. All right. All right, so we're not doing police department. So instead of a chapter 70 update, which there is none for tonight, can we talk about a couple of updates or documents that Becky shared? This is the free cash certification and the tax rate certification, which I didn't have a chance to dive in, but I did look at it quickly. Let me pull that up. Let's start with, which one should we start with? I guess we'll start with the tax rate recap. I'm going to share my screen.
That was sent earlier today.
Yeah, I think it was today, right?
I think-
The recap was sent today. Yeah, the assessors was sent today. I think
I
the
think the
half
was
was sent a few days ago.
Yeah, that was
Last
sent
week.
on, what day is that?
And I can give you some information about the recap.
Yeah, could somebody, yeah, maybe George or Becky, somebody kind of walk us through the stock that, because there's a lot in here, and I was the thing that looked like the tax rate seemed lower than I was expecting, so then I thought maybe I was reading it wrong. But hey, would you be able to walk us through this?
Becky, are you okay if I?
Sure, go
in
for
April?
it.
Go, yeah, go
April's
for it.
also on the board. So I'll tell you what I was planning on telling you, and then Becky in April, certainly, then you can add. First, it is last year's tax rate was 1844. This year's tax rate is 1783. And as you can see, 1781 in 3 other categories. So it has come down substantially, and that is because column D, the value of the taxable properties is 310 million. Last year was 293 million. So basically, it was a $17 million increase in the valuations on our properties. So that's going to have the effect of lowering the tax rate.
Yeah.
And so that's number one about the tax rate. Number two about the tax rate, as you can see, for the first time in our history, as far as I know, I believe it's the first time in our history, we have a separate tax rate. That we're not using the same tax rate for all classifications, and that is because the residential tax rate needs to be slightly higher to raise the additional funds needed to cover the new exemption that we're providing for seniors who are eligible. And so I think we thought, well, anyways, yeah. So basically,
So
the
does that
assessor
mean that we actually had people take advantage of that exemption?
people,
Yeah.
8 or 10.
Yeah.
I
8
think
people.
it was 8 people.
8 people.
And this
Yeah,
would have been the
it-
first year that was done, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and it amounts to about $9,000 in exemptions. So to collect that additional $9,000, we needed to add, the assessor needed to add 2 cents to the tax rate.
Okay. So we should expect in the future that we'll see this kind of small discrepancy between the tax
That's
rates
correct.
for the various
Yes.
types of property. Okay, got it.
Yep.
And
Thank you.
it's reviewed every year. People will have an opportunity to apply for the exemption, and I think the sense is that there probably will be more people applying as we move forward in this, and that it's the select board sets the rate of how much of the property tax is actually forgiven. So
Yes.
that's a variable, but I think the bottom line is it doesn't cost the rest of us a whole lot of money to help subsidize a small group subset of citizens, of our neighbors.
And so the
Yes.
cumulative total of those exemptions was $9,000, did you say?
A little
Yeah, 88,
blenders,
88 something.
All right, so
the total
probably
valuation
about 1,000.
properties. I think it was a $400-something thousand worth of property.
Right, but
amongst
it's
the
$8,000, but it's $8,800 that will be exempt. And so
That's
we need
right.
to raise the tax rate enough to
Yeah,
raise an
somewhere else.
additional $8,800.
Yep.
You know,
Got
so
it.
that if you look all the way in column F, 5,208,000, that includes the additional amount we're raising to cover those exemptions.
Okay, great.
So the other thing
Right.
I want to
Keep
point
going,
out
George.
is that 5,524,000 on the bottom right hand, the total tax levy. At annual town meeting, we reported that our anticipated tax levy was going to be 5,618,000. So we ended up coming in $93,749 lower on the assessment than what we had presented at the town meeting. So the good news is we were being conservative, and we were conservative. And the reason for the discrepancy is 2 things. One, Becky informed me the other day that and she mentioned this to us in a meeting, our payment in lieu of taxes for this year only is higher because Amherst didn't pay a bill last year. So we had additional 45,000, I think is the number, in revenue that we didn't have last year. So the assessors could apply that to our expenses, and that lowered this tax levy by 45,000. The other item is final new growth, new revenue was 68,000. Again, the new growth was 68,000. We used 48,000. So that's another 28,000 in revenue that we didn't count on, and therefore didn't need to raise in this tax levy. So those two items combined are 73,000 of it. And the rest of it, I'm not really sure. There's a lot going on in all these calculations. But those two factors benefited us. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention was last year, that number, 5,524,000 tax levy was 5,407,000. So our tax levy went up $116,578. That's if I read my handwriting correctly. So the tax levy did go up 2.2%, which is lower than what we were expecting, because I think we were expecting it to be over 2.5%. We were also expecting to use some of the excess levy capacity, which we did not need to do. So, you know, it came out better than what we told people at town meeting, which is really what we want. We want to be conservative. And I think that's pretty much, those are the key points that I had.
Yeah. You hit them all.
Thank you.
So let me go to Jim and then I have a question.
Yeah, George, you talked about the exemption for some of our fellow Shutesburyans. How many towns do we think, or any idea how many towns in Massachusetts are doing this right now, or at this point? I know I think we're on the early stages, right? We're one of the pioneers in this.
Yeah, I don't think it's a lot of towns, because the Senate has to have a separate vote for it. And so I don't, you know, they don't have a blanket vote for this. They have to do town by town. So out of 351 towns, I don't know, but I would expect that it's not very high. Becky, April might know better than I do.
No, I don't know the number, but I don't think it's very many either.
So we're a leader in this one.
Yeah,
We're on the cutting edge or the bleeding edge.
Yeah,
we really are.
So I guess to recap, our tax rate is that we I think estimated at town meeting was $19.16, I think, right? So we actually are coming in $1.33 below that amount. It sounds like that is explained by kind of two large factors, right? One is that our actual tax levy required to fund the budget was significantly lower than we anticipated. Some of that was due to this payment in lieu of taxes issue that you mentioned. And then part of it is explained by significant increase in the valuation of our residential properties, right?
Well, that's the tax rate, yes, but the levy was the new growth and that one time by Amherst, that one-time payment by Amherst. And both those things are temporary. We are not expecting new growth next year to be as high as it was this year. There were some adjustments that the assessor made. You know, we have a new person. We used to do it a long time ago, but now he's helping us. And he found some things that were not picked up in previous years, but these are both one-time deals. And we'll probably have to continue to use the numbers we have used for the FY25 estimate. And Susie, before Susie's question, I just wanted, one other thing I did forget to mention was that I should have mentioned is at this point, I don't know, but when I find out, I will let you know what the average tax bill for a single family home in Shutesbury is, because that's really the factor for determining, you know, how much our taxes are going up. And that's a number that the assessor hasn't provided to us, but it will be available at some point.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go to Susie and then Jim.
A couple things. One is that when Kevin Rudin suggested we go down this senior exemption, there was not a blanket one, but there were many towns. So I actually am curious, and I will look on the DLS to see if we can figure that out. And I'm also curious because property values went up across the state, to find out what the tax rates are in our other 4 towns of the region. And then the tax rate is relatively irrelevant compared to the average tax bill. So I think I am going to research that information and send it out to us so that we can see where we are relative to the towns that we share the region with.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'd also be curious just kind of where we rank in the state.
Well-
I think that is, but yeah, I think that would be an additional piece of information. That would be interesting. All right, Jim?
Yeah, just going back to your question, AJ, and I guess the answer that George had regarding tax rate and the difference between what we had plugged in, it was 19, whatever it was, versus the 1783. I think, isn't that mostly valuation increase? George and April. And then,
Yeah, the
and the
tax
reason
rate,
That would
yes.
be,
yeah, and the
so-
reason for the difference really is when we went through this process, and I think this is where we usually go through it, is we do tend to be conservative with valuations, right?
Right.
We
We assume
tend to
no
stick-
increase in the valuation.
yeah,
yeah.
Becky and I had.
Although
a-
that we did
I mean, a
expect that there
conversation
would
about
probably
that.
be, we did expect, I think, that there would probably be a pretty significant increase. We were still being conservative at sticking with the prior valuation.
makes sense.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think that was the right call, and I think we'll do the same thing next year.
But the real bottom
Uh,
line is how much the average tax bill is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
town.
Yes, that's the
Yeah.
standard for measuring towns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that posted on that DLS site now for?
So that's why I
No.
raised my hand.
Mm,
It is
That's why I
posted on the
raised my hand.
DLS.
it is.
What did you say, George? This year's is not. You
No,
won't.
it's too soon. It's
Right.
way too
Right.
soon.
It will be, yeah.
January.
Yeah, no, right. And they keep updating it until every town finally finishes their recaps, and some towns don't finish their recaps until February. So I do this myself for myself every year. I got a spreadsheet, I got all the towns, I got it for going back many years, I got the towns around us. I know I've got that data, and I'm happy maybe we can put some time aside and I'll show you what I have for fiscal 23. And I compare the same thing for fiscal 24. It does not take me long at all. And it's a template that I have. I drop the numbers in and it goes real quick. More time to update it. So I try not to even start it until January because you got to keep adding the towns that were missed. And Shutesbury comes in at about the 48th percentile in the state. We're like, as far as average single tax goes in this state, we are smack dab in the middle of the state. And our rate is lower than the average single family tax bill. Ours is lower. I can tell you that because I know that off the top of my head, but I can demonstrate that at some point in the future, AJ, if you want.
Yeah, I think it would be great.
That'd be a,
But-
yeah.
But just to clarify, that number or that measure that you said we're usually about 48%, that's the average
Single family home tax bill.
home tax bill. Okay, got it.
Yep. Yeah, and it is on the DLS site. If you go to the DLS site, local services, municipalities, and then, they changed the website, so I'm not sure. That's now.
But do they post the new information on a rolling basis as towns
They
complete
just
this
keep adding
process?
to it. You go to the
Yep.
same
Yeah.
place and there's just more towns when you get there.
Every time you go. Okay, got it.
Every time
All
you
right.
go, right. And I got to the point where I don't even try to do it
Yeah.
until after the new year. And then
Makes sense.
I can see I bring up the new one and I do a little check and I can see who's of the missing ones, who's now there. And I just add them to my table.
Right.
But
Okay.
we've come down. We used to be at the 33 percentile probably 5 years ago. So
Mhm.
as things have been going along, our average single tax bill relative to the rest of the state has actually been improving from our perspective.
Yeah. Well, so for this year, what I'm really curious about is, I think our neighbors, I think many of our neighbors proposed larger increases in their FY24 budgets, I guess. So no, I guess that we wouldn't see. Yeah, that's right. There'd be a year lag. Anyway, it'll be good to. It'll be interesting to see how, how that measure that you just cited, how we compare to our neighbors.
It's very
this
interesting.
year, and then
I think you'd
yeah.
really like to see it. And I even put the
Yeah.
counties on it so we can even look by county, you know, we can see the
Oh.
ones in our region and where we stand. We're about number 10 in Western Massachusetts, not counting Berkshire County.
Yeah. So let's do that in January. And I think maybe we should, that's also kind of valuable information for us to be maybe sharing in our annual report at the end of the year. I know we don't want to like add a lot of new information to that report, but I do kind of feel like this is something that a lot of people have interest
Yeah,
in.
we could boil it down to the most important components and it'd probably only be 2 or 3 lines. We could make it.
Yeah.
I think it'd be we could handle that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure.
All right. Yeah. Bob?
Yeah, I wanted to swing back to the issue of the tax credit. The state tax credit is, I think it was $1,200 a year for seniors that below a certain income threshold. And when you can correct me if I'm wrong, April and George, but my recollection was when Rudd proposed this, that this would closely parallel that. Our subsidy for seniors would closely parallel that, in that if a person was qualified for the state subsidy or some portion of it, that he would get the town subsidy or some portion of it in direct parallel with the state criteria, which are worked out with the state income tax form. And that was clear to me, and maybe I'm mistaken about this, that would not involve further authentication by taxpayers here in terms of turning over all their financials to the town, but they would just simply have to provide the town with the state income form and the certification from the state. Now, what I've seen in the implementation of this, I saw that the town required full disclosure of financials to the town assessors in order to qualify for whatever the subsidy is. So I'm not willing to do that. And I don't think a lot of seniors or people that are retired that are qualified for the state subsidy would be willing to turn over their financials. I think that's something that most people would not care to do. I certainly wouldn't.
It is confidential. I mean, we do not spread it.
I'm just making the point. I'm just saying that to me personally, that was a changeover from the way it was originally described, the way that the measure was voted on. In the implementation, this other, what I consider to be somewhat nefarious condition was put on it. So there's no way I'm going to apply for it, even though I did qualify for the state subsidy, the state credit last year. I did not apply for it for the town.
Okay, it's your choice. Okay.
Right. I'm just saying a lot of people would feel the same way.
Right.
So
I was trying to pull up the information when Kevin was presented on this. Okay. Jim Walton.
If you could put up what you had there again, if it's.
Oh yeah, sure. So this was, I think the document I'm pulling up is, so when Kevin had presented, or I think introduced us to this concept, he used this as an example of a town that had implemented something similar. And so this was their application.
George, can you pull up the one we have?
I am. I'm looking right now. I'm at the assessor site.
That looks like what you're doing.
I'm looking. I found the means testing information sheet, but that didn't have the steps. I know it's here. I've seen it before. I don't remember where I saw it. Here we go. Application for means testing. I just found it.
Yeah, it's under.
Yeah, it's there. I've got it. I got it on the screen, and I'm looking to see what it specifically asks you to give. You must have filed a tax form CB, circuit breaker. I think that's the only form they expect you to provide, because that has the dollar amount. Yeah, it's a tax credit. It's the senior tax credit. I think that's the only thing they ask for. Provide your senior tax credit, income tax credit amount here. In fact, I don't even think it asks for that. You must file. It just says you must file a Massachusetts State CB circuit breaker for previous calendar year. Your applicant must be 65. The applicant must receive the assessor's office, and it asks you for the dollar amount. please attach a copy of your previous calendar year state income tax filing. So it does ask for that and the corresponding MA. So they do ask for your state tax return. That's what it says here. Now, I believe that, and we bring this up in our next meeting, I believe that they really only need the CB form, the one page that calculates the credit. But, you know, that's still confidential information. It's still got your social security
Right.
code number on it. It's got your income
So,
on it.
so maybe I'm mistaken then, guys, but when I did go to the town website, when the announcement was sent to the town that this program that was going to be initiated and would be available this year, last year's for taxes, I did go, and the first thing I encountered was a form that would ask me to provide my financial details of assets and so forth and so on. And I said, well, and that was a prerequisite. That was my understanding. Maybe I was mistaken, but I hope
No,
so.
I think you're right, Bob.
No, I think you're
Yeah.
right. It's on the form.
Yeah.
Give us your
So-
current value of your principal residence.
Yeah.
And
For what it's worth, this town, I mean, this was one of the models I think that was used when this policy was created, and this other town, you can see here, the documentation that's requested is pretty
Right.
extensive. Yeah,
But I
But,
think it's the same, I think it's Hopkinton that
yeah,
was the document that was also used in, you know, information was
Before
gotten from
ours.
the Hopkinton document.
yeah.
yeah.
So
So,
I think Bob's right. I think what Bob's saying is true.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
because
and
they had to ask additional information.
yeah, I guess the point is that it sounds like this was probably the plan all along, but and that this wasn't
We don't
necessarily.
have Kevin, you know, Kevin may have implemented it different. We'll never know.
Right.
right.
Jim,
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to George's comment earlier about, you mentioned we're in the middle of the state compared to the state with regard to the average tax bill, something along that lines, and you're going to
Yes.
put some data
We're
together.
like 48th percentile in terms of the number of towns. We're almost like smack dab in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one thing, I mean, to consider about this, in addition to what you have there, is we all as home owners contribute 94% of the tax into the town, which is well above the average town in Massachusetts. The average town is in the low 80s. You know, the rest of their taxes comes from commercial and industrial and whatnot, personal. So we choose to live in a town. We all are here for the reason of we don't have a lot of that stuff. We don't have the commercial. We don't have the industrial. So we're getting the benefit of a place that doesn't have those things, and balancing that with having an average tax bill.
Jim, is there a source that you know of where that can be used to look up that proportion of the town's
Yeah, it's
revenue?
right on the same database.
It is the same
George,
DLS site?
Yeah, George, who had the tax rate form that can they put that up again?
Yeah.
I think George had.
Oh, no, it's the
no,
recap. I
oh,
think is what he's
okay.
talking
The,
about.
it's
Okay.
the DLS site.
Okay.
All right, so
right.
if you look at the first column or column B,
Yeah,
and you see residential's 94% for us,
yeah, right.
column B, and then industrial is 0.4 and this personal is
Right.
4.6.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, now this data all feeds into a state database where every town and city.
So it's the same, right? It's the same database.
Yeah,
that
they're
we
feeding
are.
the same form.
If you go to the DLS website, they have a tremendous volume of analyses, reports on all kinds of things. You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot there, and I'll call some of it noise. If you're interested in something like that, you might be able to find it. It's not on the schedule. I probably should double check, but that's definitely not on the schedule that I use, because I'm pulling it up right now, because I know it's not, but I'm going to double check anyways.
Yeah.
Right.
So where I'm going,
the point here though is we're at a 94% net residential contribution, whereas they say the state average is somewhere in the low 80s.
Yeah, when you look at the data, when we look at this data together, it is just on the single family homes, and we're going to know when we look at some of these towns that they have a commercial base, and we're going to look at other towns and know they don't. But we're not going to know which really, other than what we know about the towns around us. But the point is, for the, it does show you though how we rank against other towns as far as what the residents, the citizens who have residents in the town are paying.
But it would be interesting to see where some kind of industrialization can offset some of the residential property tax,
Well-
and how that looks in other towns. I just,
Be
Be
and if
interesting.
you find that, send it to me, and maybe I can incorporate it in this, even if it's just a code, or the percentage that's residential, and just have a column, and we can look at that and see for each town what their percentage of residential is. So it's true, and I would expect that a lot of the towns below us, the residential portion is going to be lower, because they're going to have a commercial base that's subsidizing what the residents are paying. And I expect that a lot of towns above us don't. Although there are towns above us that don't, like Amherst. And I think Northampton's tax rate is higher than ours, if I remember correctly. I'd have to look. We can talk about all that another time. But yeah, Jim, if you're going to look that information up, that would definitely be helpful.
Yeah. I pulled it up before, George. I think it is that database. I downloaded the whole state into a spreadsheet probably about 2 years ago. And
Yeah, if you can find that
each one of these boxes is a box for each community, and all of the cities, communities in the state are all there. So it's easy to download.
I
From
think
that state database.
If you want to send me the link, and I'll try and maybe somehow incorporate that into this. I haven't done it in the past. There's a lot we can do and add to
Yeah, here it
this.
is right here. Well,
Yeah,
this is
A lot of
this
us
is
can have a lot
this
of us
is
can
one
have a lot
way.
of good ideas.
Those are rates.
Yeah. So
Well, this doesn't. This just shows rates.
Right.
right.
This is just showing rates. It's not showing the actual contribution of each municipality or each.
Right.
It's gotta
Okay.
be there
Anyway,
somewhere.
I think you're absolutely right. There's a lot of potential here. But I think there are, I think it would be worth, George, spending some time in January and having you kind of walk us through your research on the FY24
Right.
stats.
The only thing I would say to that is, I'll start putting the data together in January, and probably 70% of the towns, 65% of the towns will be in at that point. But if you want to talk about this conceptually, I have 2023 right now. It's done.
Right.
So we could even maybe devote 10 or 15 minutes to looking at that, get our baseline where we are before this year, before this year's tax rates are finally published, and decide, is it okay the way I have it? Do you want to make any tweaks to it? So when I do the 24 one, I can just hit the ground running. So that's just something to think about, AJ, if we got time in the meeting.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, I don't know. We do have just one department at our next meeting. I don't know if that's too early. Yeah, that's probably too soon.
No, the FY23 is done. I could show it to you now if you want, but I can't make that meeting. I was going to tell you at the end.
Oh,
I'm traveling that day,
Well,
and I'm landing at Logan at like 8:00 at night.
no problem. We'll find some time to before January to just take a kind of a quick look at the way you organize the information using the FY23 data, and we'll give you some some feedback.
I have to do whatever makes sense, and I'm sure out of this group we'll have some good ideas.
Yeah. Okay, Susie.
There's another part of the picture here that the tax rate went down, and that's going to be less pressure at staying under the $25 per thousand, and the state's probably pretty happy about that. But in fact, tax bills went up because the valuations went up. So a lower tax rate doesn't mean a lower average tax bill, and that pressure is on us. But in the meantime, the state's going like, well, you're not at $25 per thousand. So this whole thing about who gets political cover from this is annoying to me. And it still will be about relativity for like the four towns, who's being pushed and how hard. And, it's not about the tax rate, it's about the average tax bill. And the state gets to sort of walk away from that issue for another, $8 or $7. And I think somehow the way this is set up, we end up facing the biggest pressure, and the state gets to walk away.
So I do think it does occur to me that if this information is posted for the other 4 towns prior to our December 16th 4 towns meeting, it's probably would be a good idea for us to look it up and see if there are any significant changes in how the towns compare to one another.
Well,
relative to FY23.
George is on it.
Well, I'll tell you this. Yeah, I'm on. I already know, and it doesn't change from year to year. It does change. The differences change, but the rankings never change. It's always Amherst, Pelham, and Leverett. And last year, our tax rate, our average single tax bill was $6,090, and Amherst was $2,900 higher than that at $9,000. And
Wow.
Pelham is $1,244 higher than ours at $7,334. And then Leverett is $572 higher than us at $6,662. It's that way every year since I've been doing this. Not necessarily $572, $1,224.44, and $2,894 to Amherst, but in those ranges, it's scale-wise been pretty steady.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I guess my sense is that the other towns increased their FY24 budgets to a larger degree than we did. So I wonder if some of those, if the magnitude of the difference between us and the rest of the towns may have increased. I'm not sure, but anyway, we'll take
every year. Every year is different.
Yeah.
But
But I appreciate your point that the order is probably not gonna change. Yeah,
that's right.
Okay. Any other questions about the tax rate certification? No. All right. Did we look at the
Free cash.
the free cash? Yeah, let's do that. Okay. So this is our free cash certification. So I guess, are there any kind of key takeaways here that anybody's picked up, either Becky or George or anybody else? So this was our starting number, I assume, right? 1.2 million.
Well, the thing we want to compare that to, what I would say is we want to compare it to what we were projecting it to be.
Yeah.
And we were projecting it on that capital expenditure, that capital funding schedule that we use when we're trying to figure out how to fund all our different projects.
Yeah, let me pull that up. So I think we did one on May 23rd was our last one. Okay, so we were expecting, so this would be the sum of our 3 free cash accounts, right?
No, just
Free
the
cash.
Just
Oh,
free
just the
cash,
free
not
cash.
capital stabilization.
Okay. So the CapEx form that I'm looking at says that we were expecting the free cash line to end at $767,000.
That's what I
That
have.
sound right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that is right. It's 768, call it, with the 924 rounds up to
Right, yeah,
768.
Yeah. All right. And so what we're ending up with is actually 1,094,000. Is that right?
Right. And
yeah,
I would just remind everyone that we did not increase our 767,924 for any estimate of what we might have generated in free cash during last year. We just took the beginning balance of the free cash and subtracted out all the things that we were going to fund with free cash, and we came up with 767,924.
So we were assuming no returns back to free cash, right? No
right,
accruals.
exactly. Again, to be conservative.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. All right. So, well, that looks a lot better than it
Mm,
than we thought it would. Susie?
And we also know that we had to eat into the health insurance that we had extra allocated to deal with some of our transfers. So we can't project any more than what we think what we have and what we're taking out. And even if we tried to project something maybe that we think more free cash will flow in, we had to meet some expenses that we weren't anticipating.
mhm.
All right, so this may be a dumb question for Becky, but I'm assuming that all of the capital expenses where we at town meeting used free cash allocations to pay for them. So everything from PFAS, poets and testing to floors at the school. I think we did $20,000 for the building committee, and then the Lake Wyola stuff. All of those have been pulled out of our free cash line, right? So that would be reflected in the number that we're looking at here on this free cash certification. Is that accurate?
Yes, I believe it is.
Yeah. Okay, good. Okay. Any other questions about free cash?
Mm.
All right.
I have a question, if I may.
Please, Bob.
If Becky can help me with this, the dental insurance line and the debit on the free cash. How does that get in there from free cash? I don't understand that.
I think there was a negative amount left, and anytime there's an account left in the negative, for whatever reason, it dings free cash. For example, this year, Tim had $170,000 Chapter 90 reimbursement. And it was put in by September 30th. But which is the deadline, but if we hadn't made that deadline, the free cash would have been reduced by $170,000 to cover that amount of anticipated money. So if there's missing money somewhere in any fund that impacts the town in the process of reconciling free cash, they will ding the free cash for that amount. And in this case, it was a problem with the dental insurance that has to get resolved.
So that dental insurance, has that been sorted, independent of this reconciliation, or what? I mean, because we did take 30,000 out of health insurance. I presume that's related to dental insurance.
Well, see, no, it's not. Dental insurance is not funded by the town at all.
Oh, I see.
Dental insurance is paid, the individual employees have to pay for the dental insurance.
Ah,
Some point, there's a problem that Ryan has been going back and forth with the dental company, the dental insurer on, and we hope to get this resolved, but it's not paid for by the town.
so in just one last point, then that number, the 25,000, that will be restored to free cash, even though it will be part of our approved sort of free cash total. It will be in our account once that bill has been paid. Is that true?
I thought I was looking at a $4,000 account. So when you said 25,000, is that still dental, or is that the
Yeah,
total?
dental.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just thinking in terms of how much money we have. I mean, if that's just simply a matter of it not being reconciled, 26,000, then that money is actually still there. That may be true of some of these other items, as far as I from what you say. Even though it's been debited from our
Free
the
cash,
deferred
right.
revenue's been
So when
debited.
right, so when the revenue, so they've dinged us from the free cash,
Right.
but when it's resolved, the money will be added to free
So
cash
it'll be
Yeah.
restored to our bank account, but we won't be able to use it because it won't be
for
part
a
of
year
this.
and a half. Yeah,
Yeah, right. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
you're right.
All right, thanks for clarifying. All right. Okay, let's move on. Okay, any project updates that you wanted to share? Or-
I have to share that
Yeah,
paving,
Becky.
the paving has not yet happened, and I do not have a fully confident, confirmed rescheduling for paving. I've been told it will happen on Monday or Tuesday, but whenever they say one day or another, they're not committed. And so hopefully it really will be Monday or Tuesday, but at this point, I'm very disappointed. It should have been last Friday. It
Yeah,
should
it's a
have
beautiful
been
day.
this Monday. Should have been this Wednesday, this Friday, and now they're talking about next week. But there's little we can do about it.
Is that probably because the asphalt company is hard to schedule right now? Because there's so few good days. Like Thursday's another beautiful day, but Friday was a beautiful day. But everybody else wants this stuff too, right?
Yep. And last Thursday's rain all day long just set everything back.
Probably like just eroded the surface, right?
No, we're prepared. We've been prepared. It's because they couldn't pave for a full day. So all the projects got backed up further.
Sure.
But the culvert is installed. Is that correct?
Well, the culvert is beautiful. All the landscaping is
Okay.
done. Guardrails are up.
The road is the road open?
No, we can't open because we've got a 4-inch drop off to where the paving has to occur.
Yeah. That's
And
too
they're
bad.
gonna do the milling. I believe they'll do the milling by the end of this week. That has to be done to smooth both edges. And I'll talk to them further to find out if after the milling's done, maybe potentially we can open the road, even if it's gonna,
Big drop.
all the work would have to be redone to prepare it.
Yeah.
And then we're into more cost overruns that we've tried to minimize as much as
Right.
possible. So I just have depressing news about the culvert.
Okay. All right. All right, let's move on to committee updates. Does anybody have committee updates? Actually, I can share capital planning at its first meeting, and we approved, a set of documents that'll go to the departments, asking them for information about any FY25 requests they anticipate, and also asking them to review the long range capital plan document. I think they have a December 4th deadline or something like that, 4th or 5th. We are meeting again on December 11th. So I think we should have our first set of requests that we will be reviewing at that meeting. I can tell you that we did spend, some time looking at our long-term capital plan. And let's see, I'm just going to pull that up right now. Maybe I'll share this real quick. All right. And you can see this yellow highlighted column are just some items nobody's like officially requested these things yet, but these are items that just were in our FY 25 plan. And so I think the big ones that we think we might hear about are a request from the police department for replacement of this cruiser, and then the elementary school, we've been putting off this parking lot and painting, siding, and trim work of the building. We were sort of waiting for the roof to get done to address those issues. So we think we might hear about those this year. And I think those are the big ones. But we'll see. There may be some requests that that we'll receive that we're not anticipating. Okay, Susie, school update.
The school will be meeting this Thursday, and on the agenda is the draft budget. I checked in with Caitlin to make sure that I will get to have the copy if they're going to go over it. She said it's almost done, so I'm not 100% clear that I believe it's going to be on the agenda, and I will be able to listen to them going through it, and then I will be able to. We should probably put it on our agenda to go over it, and I will forward it to Becky and the committee when I get the copy.
When did you say that meeting was?
This
Thursday.
Thursday.
It's Thursday. Okay.
This Thursday. What is this number? 16th.
Okay. So it's possible that we might be able to put some time on our November 28th meeting to look at that. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks, Bob.
We can't hear you, Bob.
I just wanted to reintroduce a subject that's interesting to me, which is that I think the school long-term would really benefit from a whole building ventilation system. I think that was something that I would hope that ARPA money could underwrite, which didn't happen, but I think for long-term capital planning to improve the public health and to improve the building's performance, because of all this concern about viruses, well, a HEPA system, which would provide fresh air to the school environment, would really improve the health of our students and our staff. And I think that's something that should be looked at and should be examined. There might be, who knows, there might be grant money available. There was grant money available, but it was spent on other things. So I think that it would still be a valuable way to improve that building. So I think the school committee should be aware of that. That's an idea that that I think that would probably be, again, it'd be a very useful improvement. And so we might want to start looking into that, and they might want to start thinking about it. So maybe you could convey that to her, or maybe I should reach out to Susie. I don't know.
You're muted.
You're muted, Susie.
I know, I was trying to
Oh,
unmute,
sorry.
it wouldn't go. I will bring it up on Thursday.
Okay, any other committee updates? All right. Any other updates from any committee members or any other issues that folks wanted to raise? All right, so we are meeting on November 28th. We'll meet with the fire department. Jim, if you can follow up with Lenny and just make sure he's clear on kind of what he needs, what we need from him, that'd be great.
Yeah, AJ, I
sounds-
did send him a message earlier during our meeting, and I hope to meet up with him sometime this week.
Great.
Perfect.
Hmm.
All right. And then it sounds like we'll probably have some time to look at the preliminary school budget. And again, I think our focus for that discussion ought to be preparing a set of follow-up questions that we have for the finance. Why am I all of a sudden blanking on her name? What's her name again? Kristen? No.
Christian, what,
Caitlin,
Kristen-
Caitlin.
Kristen
Yes.
Burgess.
Caitlin. Oh,
Caitlin
I'm
Sheridan.
talking about for the school.
Who-
Caitlin
I
Sheridan.
thought you were talking about the
Thanks.
police.
oh, I
Sorry.
was stuck on the police.
Longy. No, so the idea here is we're going to get a preliminary look at the elementary school budget, and what we did last year that I thought was really helpful, and we said we would do again this year, is we would prepare a set of follow-up questions, things that we want her to respond to, or additional things we want to learn about, so we can prepare a list of questions that Susie can then bring to Caitlin, and we'll get answers to those. Okay. I think that's it. So, Susie?
So we have not done the expense report review. And I'm gonna re-propose something I did last year, which is I would like, first of all, I do the minutes. I have not been reading the expense report. But I would like maybe two people to be in charge of reviewing it and just bringing up what they noticed. I don't know that we all have to look at it and I mean, if they bring up what's noticeable or notable, then we could focus on it in a more condensed way. It doesn't mean that other people can't look at it. It just means maybe we won't be pushing it off our agenda over and over.
So here's what I would propose. I know, Bob, I think you always, I think, are pretty diligent about reviewing the expense report. I don't think we have actually had received one since our last meeting, which is why I didn't bring it up tonight. But I certainly would be willing to make sure that I get a chance to review it. Bob, I assume we can count on you to do that.
My favorite things
well.
to read, really, you know.
I know. So
I
I
only
think
get the
at least-
audio version, I'd be happy, you know.
Yeah. So I think between the two of us, I think that would be a kind of minimum. And then obviously everybody's welcome to review those expense reports, but at least I see your point, Susie, and that would ensure that at least two of us have had a chance to look at it and can bring up and highlight any irregularities or just anything that we think is worth sharing with the committee. Jim Walton?
Yeah, I guess my only concern with that approach is that I think all of us have a different idea of what we think is important or what we have interest or concern about. And I guess I just think this is probably a pretty important element of the finance committee. It's a pretty important role for all of us. So just a couple of thoughts on that.
Yep. Yeah, that's fair. George?
Yeah, in the same vein, I mean, I don't understand. To me, we all get it. Those of us who want to or can review it. When we get to this portion of the agenda, who's got comments, we're all going to have the line items that we're interested in. So we can assign two people to do that, and they're going to have some line items. But if Jim has some line items and I have some line items, you're going to give us the opportunity to talk about it. So to me, it's we shouldn't go through it line by line. Bring it up and say, okay, who's got questions on it? Point out the lines. We talk about those lines, and we're done. So you know, I think we can do it efficiently as a group.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, I think one thing I can do is make sure that it doesn't get like buried at the end of the agenda every time. So like if we've gone, a couple of meetings where we haven't spent a significant amount of time looking at it, I can make sure that it gets addressed earlier in the next meeting then.
In this one, you said you didn't want to review it. You didn't bring it up today because we haven't received a new one, but we never reviewed the one that we have. So, I'm not saying we need to look at it. I'm okay with waiting. I had a few questions, but they can wait till the next one. I assume there's one coming soon. Now that October's over.
Yeah, it'll probably be on Wednesday or Thursday.
All right.
And also, are we going to get the final one for
posting?
Are we going to get the final one for FY23 as well?
I can send
that. Must be close to done.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I'll make sure it gets discussed at our next meeting. The updated one, not the one from in October. Okay. Great. Anything else?
Well,
All right. I'll
Celtics.
entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Want to kick us off, George?
Overnight aside.
Grove's eye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosher, I.
Stein, aye.
Walton, aye.
All right.
Right. Oh, sorry. One thing I forgot to mention is I think folks probably saw that, but it looks like we potentially will have this Four Towns meeting on December 16th. I know that we still have to hear back. That was our preference, but maybe you guys could just, reserve that time on your calendars, just in case we do move forward
Yeah.
with that.
AJ, who did you hear that from?
So I think, so there was an email exchange. Was that earlier today or yesterday? I can't
Today.
remember now.
Yeah, I
Today.
initiated it, but
Yeah,
it was upon request from the region. and-
right.
But we haven't heard
So-
back. I have
Yeah, the
to,
region may still go with the other day.
yeah.
Understood.
I don't
Yeah.
think they will because it was pretty unanimous, but I haven't emailed them yet with the answer because there were still people responding.
Okay.
But I think I hope it better be on the 16th or Shutesbury
Yeah.
won't be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good plan.
All right. So hopefully that'll work out. Okay.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody.
We'll see you later.
One last
Oh.
thing, AJ,
Oh,
watched the game
yeah.
last night.
I watched the first half of it and I was happy to turn it off at that point. Yeah.
The
That
Knicks
was
are
the best
actually-
half for a Knicks fan.
Knicks were very improved. They're a very improved team, let's face it.
Yeah, they're
Bye-bye.
not in the Celtics league, but they're getting
not.
closer. They're narrowing the gap. Yeah.
All right,
Well, it's going to be tough to beat the Celtics this year. They got a good
Yeah.
team. So, all right.
Yeah.
See ya.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good week.
You too.